Hollywood's golden age is praised for the brooding men and sultry femmes who graced the silver screens, but it was also an era of studs and seductresses who did what they wanted, when they wanted. Here are 10 of the most promiscuous figures of this era. Number 10. Clark Gable. Many believe Clark Gable adopted his Hollywood playboy persona after his romance and eventual marriage to Carole Lombard. However, that assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Dubbed the King long before Elvis Presley, Clark Gable remains one of the most iconic and cherished leading men in cinematic history, even 65 years after his passing. As the ultimate movie star of the Golden Age, Gable inspired countless men, from postmen to clerks and gas station attendants, who wished they could embody his charm and charisma. His female fans, though? Even worse. Every city he visited had thousands of women gathered to catch a glimpse of him. It was so bad that police escorts had to surround train stations just to get him to appointments. Despite his ability to charm almost any woman, Gable frequently chose high-priced call girls, explaining that he preferred the simplicity of these arrangements over the emotional complexities that often followed romantic relationships. He didn't want to be seen as Hollywood's greatest lover, and he made sure his women knew it. Many believe Clark Gable had a preference for older women, citing his first 2 marriages as evidence. However, these relationships seemed more about convenience than passion. His first wife, Josephine Dillon, who was 17 years his senior and also his acting coach, later revealed that their union was never consummated and was a marriage in name only. His second marriage was to a wealthy 46-year-old Houston divorcee, Rhea Langham, who played a supportive role in his budding career. Still, Gable wasn't fixed in the alleged older woman syndrome. Remember his wild and steamy affair with the younger Joan Crawford? Despite both stars being married at the time, the actress described Gable as having an animal magnetism and admitted she doubted any actress who worked with him could resist feeling an overwhelming attraction. Though Carole Lombard was undeniably the great love of Clark Gable's life, he was far from being a one-woman man. Gable's romantic pursuits continued even during their relationship, involving high-profile affairs with Jean Harlow, Ava Gardner, and Loretta Young, with whom he had a secret child. With Gable's notoriety reaching the roof, not even MGM and their machines could keep his liaisons a secret. His relationships with MGM women, including Virginia Gray, gave the studio grounds to terminate his contract for immoral behavior. But would you blame him? As Hollywood's ultimate romantic idol, Clark Gable found himself relentlessly pursued by women, particularly on the studio lot, where he was most accessible. With little ability or desire to resist, he frequently engaged in affairs with starlets, extras, and even secretaries. They don't call him the King of Hollywood for no reason.
Don't do anything foolish. When are we leaving?
Number 9. Marlene Dietrich. Ever wondered what Clark Gable and Marlene Dietrich both have in common? Their love for women, that's what. Hollywood historians recognize the 1930s as an era when leading women were most promiscuous and sought after by both men and women. If true, Marlene Dietrich was at the forefront. Born in the hotbed of sexual liberation and exploration, Dietrich was very assertive in her romantic pursuits, always seeking out and flirting with beautiful women. She was so radical that the Washington Post described Dietrich as the busiest and most passionate bisexual in theatrical Berlin. Infamous for having a notorious and compulsive appetite for the seduction of other beautiful women, Dietrich was very indiscreet about her desires. She would often mockingly describe her lovers to her husband, Rudolf Seiber, and never shy away from having taboo liaisons. Rita Hayworth once described her passionate encounter with Marlene Dietrich as one of the most memorable experiences she ever had in bed. However, this was far from the only significant relationship Dietrich had. It's also rumored that both Joan Crawford and her husband, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., had affairs with Dietrich. Can you imagine how crazy that must have been? While Marlene Dietrich couldn't openly embrace her bisexuality, she didn't go to great lengths to hide her thrilling love life. She had numerous affairs, some of which were known to her husband, involving both men and women. The latter was described as sewing circles, a term that quickly became code for gatherings of queer women in Hollywood. It allegedly included stars like Greta Garbo, Ann Warner, and a string of other big names from Hollywood's golden age. Dietrich became a central figure in this sapphic community, providing a safe place for women to meet others in secret without the fear of public backlash. But hey, she wasn't just attracted to women. Dietrich was linked with a lot of powerful men like Frank Sinatra, John Wayne, James Stewart, and Cary Grant, and get this, U.S. President John F. Kennedy. Contrary to what you might be thinking about the Golden Age star, Marlene Dietrich was far more than just a promiscuous woman. She was a pioneering figure during World War II, publicly denounced the Nazi regime in her homeland, and helped people escape Germany. She also sold American war bonds and entertained troops on the front lines. Though her on-screen roles diminished as younger stars emerged, she spent her later years performing in her signature queer-coded top hat, tuxedo, and tails while maintaining an active romantic life into her 70s. She died at the age of 90 in her Paris apartment and was mourned by thousands during her 2 funerals, a fitting end to a woman who symbolized freedom, beauty, glamour, and decadence throughout her life. Number 8. Frank Sinatra. Widely recognized as one of the most celebrated entertainers of the 20th century, Frank Sinatra is easily one of the most recognizable names in the world. He had an estimated 150 million records sold worldwide, ranking among the best-selling music artists in history, and was known to have an opulent, extravagant lifestyle. He famously spent bucket loads of cash on his custom-tailored tuxedos and stylish pinstripe suits, believing they enhanced his image and showed his dedication to his audience. One of the lesser-known facts about him, however, is his obsession with cleanliness. He frequently showered and changed outfits, habits that earned him the nickname Lady Macbeth during his time with the Tommy Dorsey Band. Curious about his iconic name, Old Blue Eyes? This one's easier to piece together. It stemmed from his striking blue eyes. As you'd expect for a man of his wealth, fame, and affluence, Frank Sinatra's personal life was anything but dull. He was married 4 times and had a plethora of relationships, flings, and one-night stands with all kinds of old Hollywood icons, including Ava Gardner, whom he married. It was one of Hollywood's most publicized, chaotic relationships and had several episodes of fights and altercations. Though they announced their separation on October 29, 1953 through MGM, it wasn't until 1954 that Gardner filed for divorce while romantically involved with matador Luis Miguel Dominguín. The divorce was finalized in 1957, but the duo maintained a lifelong friendship. Despite rumors claiming that Sinatra continued to harbor deep feelings for Gardner, she wasn't the only recipient of the star's love and affection. Sinatra was romantically linked to powerful Hollywood women like Lana Turner, Judy Garland, and Marilyn Monroe, each at the top of the industry at the time. However, for all his charm and allure, Sinatra was a man of several issues behind the scenes. Described as having an offensive persecution complex, Frank Sinatra was noted to have unpredictable mood swings that so often escalated into violent outbursts. He targeted those he believed had wronged him, such as critical journalists, publicists, and photographers, and never failed to make headlines. Remember the negative publicity he received for altercations with Lee Mortimer in 1947? Instead of learning a couple lessons, he followed up with the face-off with photographer Eddie Shisser in Houston in 1950, Judy Garland's publicist Jim Byron on the Sunset Strip in 1954, and even Maxine Cheshire in 1973, where he made a degrading insinuation about her character. To make things worse, Frank Sinatra was also claimed to have mob ties that committed far more atrocities. The only silver lining here is that the next woman on the list was far more calm.
Was it you who kissed me?
You're talking. You're alive.
Well, of course I'm alive. What did you think I was?
Well, I'm not.
Number 7. Ava Gardner. Ah yes, Ava Gardner, the famous soulmate of Frank Sinatra. The star actress was the primary figure of the musician's love life, but saying they were not compatible is a massive understatement. Yes, she cared deeply for Sinatra and supported him through his struggles, but their relationship was tumultuous. They often engaged in heated arguments that escalated into public shouting matches or even destruction of property. During one particularly intense altercation, Sinatra hurled a water-filled douche at Gardner and her friend Lana Turner. You might want to remember the name of this friend, though she's going to play a huge part in Gardner's story. For now, though, let's talk about a few other men who got all caught up in Ava's allure. Okay, so, right off the bat, Gardner had a brief marriage to actor Mickey Rooney in the early 1940s, and while he at one point boasted about how good their love life was in his eyes, Gardner later dismissed his claims, stating that while he might have enjoyed the experience, she certainly did not. During the 1940s and into the 1950s, Gardner was romantically involved with the eccentric multimillionaire and aviator Howard Hughes, but she claimed to never be in love. The relationship only lasted so long due to the deep trust he placed in her. Gardner described Hughes as an intensely shy, enigmatic, and eccentric individual, unlike anyone else she had ever encountered. Make no mistake, though, there were a lot of men. The actress had brief romances with several notable figures, including actor Fred McMurray, matador Luis Miguel Dominguin, actor George C. Scott, author Ernest Hemingway, and Claude Terrell, the renowned restaurateur of Paris's famous La Tour d'Argent. And guess what? These names are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of her sexual conquests. The exact count on the number of men that Gardner seduced would be downright impossible because many were done in secret. Adding to the intrigue was the fact that tabloids fueled speculation about Ava Gardner's alleged relationship with women in the industry. She openly denied these claims before later admitting to having been involved with Lana Turner and several other top female stars. Wondering why she denied the claims at first? While no one cares what two actresses practice in private in recent times, Ava Gardner's peak period in Hollywood coincided with a time when same-sex relationships weren't only socially frowned upon, but also illegal in most places. She had to keep her sapphic relationships secret, as publicizing them could get her blacklisted. Only when Ava grew more confident in herself and her abilities as an actor did she blossom into the open-minded, free-spirited individual that we know today. She fought against the controlling contracts of Hollywood studios, citing them to be restrictive, stifling, and often hypocritical. The next man on our list personifies the evil of these Hollywood studios. He's one of the worst men in Hollywood history. Number 6. Louis B. Mayer. Decades before the Harvey Weinstein scandal was a man called Louis B. Mayer, one of the co-founders of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios in 1924. Under Mayer's management, MGM rose to prominence as the most prestigious movie studio in Hollywood, boasting an unmatched roster of leading writers, directors, and stars. At its peak, MGM was a bustling hub with 6,000 employees operating in what was essentially a self-contained studio town. The facilities included a dentist, chiropractor, and foundry, alongside a factory dedicated to creating props for its numerous sound stages, where 18 films were often in production at once. However, behind this success lay Mayer's deeply decadent and exploitative behavior, tarnishing the studio's legacy with a dark undercurrent of manipulation and abuse. He used his power ruthlessly to coerce, threaten, and manipulate women. No one dared to stand against him because he warned that defying his demands wouldn't only end their careers, but also jeopardize the futures of their loved ones. Wondering why MGM's image felt so perfect on the outside? Well, that's because Mayer deployed draconian levels of control to keep it that way. Every bad report, from infidelity to addictions, assault, and harassment, was all kept quiet to keep up appearances. However, his greatest sin was the series of essays that surrounded his life. He was accused of abusing several women, including a teenage Judy Garland. Gerald Clark's biographer, Get Happy: The Life of Judy Garland, details how Mayer conducted meetings with young actresses seated on his lap while inappropriately touching them. Shirley Temple later recounted that Mayer made advances toward her mother while she was in another office with producer Arthur Freed, who reportedly undressed in front of her. Think that's shocking? No, we're just getting started. Mayer reportedly pursued Jean Howard, hoping to initiate an intimate relationship with her, but she rejected his advances and later married agent Charles K. Feldman. Mayer retaliated by banning Feldman from the MGM lot and refusing to allow his clients to work with the studio for an extended period. Similarly, actress Esther Ralston documented in her autobiography that her career suffered after she declined Mayer's inappropriate propositions. It's so sad that Mayer died of leukemia at the age of 73 without facing the repercussions of his actions. 2,000 people attended his funeral inside the Jewish Temple on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, while another 3,000 gathered outside. The ceremony was filled with prominent figures even beyond Hollywood, and former President Herbert Hoover served as an honorary pallbearer. Mayer had died with his honor unbesmirched. It would take years for the darker aspects of his legacy to come to light. Coming next is a woman who chose to never marry, but sure loved to get around. Number 5. Greta Garbo. For a woman who seemingly loved solitude, Greta Garbo sure had a lot of flings. The silver screen legend pursued relationships with both men and women regardless of their sexual orientation or marital status, and she unapologetically did it all on her own terms. Her romantic entanglements in Hollywood were well documented, ranging from a high-profile connection with John Gilbert to a more discreet relationship with Mercedes D'Acosta. While her sexuality remains enigmatic, much to her decision to leave the film industry, one particular relationship continues to puzzle historians. Cecil Beaton. Garbo reportedly bedded and intermittently dated the mostly gay fashion photographer, but he wasn't the only object of her affection. When MGM brought Sven Hugo Borg on board as her interpreter after her 1925 move to Los Angeles, the actress wasted no time turning their professional relationship into a personal one. Later, during the filming of The Painted Veil in 1934, life imitated art as Greta Garbo, much like her character, found herself entangled in a romantic connection with George Brent. The relationship progressed to the point where she briefly moved in with him, marking yet another chapter in her storied and often private love life. As for her lesbian side, Garbo's romantic history included documented connections with women such as Tula Bankhead, Billie Holiday, and Louise Brooks, along with whispers of a relationship with Josephine Baker. However, her most notable and enduring same-sex bond was with poet Mercedes D'Acosta, a woman infamous for her extensive relationships with prominent women of the time. It's believed that Acosta deeply fell in love with Garbo, though the feelings weren't mutual. Garbo was mostly aloof and later got fed up with Acosta's stifling and dramatic jealousies and sufferings. Another interesting relationship we'd like to talk about was with Marlene Dietrich. Yes, the Marlene Dietrich, a woman who publicly denied ever crossing paths with Garbo.
Did you know her?
No, I did not.
Contrary to what both women claim, the two icons not only met, but shared the screen in Joyless Street and began a passionate affair behind the scenes. The relationship, however, ended in heartbreak. The younger Garbo developed deep feelings for Dietrich, only to be seen as a mere fling. The German temptress also gossiped about her all over Hollywood. This emotional betrayal profoundly impacted Garbo, who not only became fiercely private about her romantic life, but also required absolute secrecy from all her future female lovers. Dietrich, respecting Garbo's demand for silence, never publicly spoke about their rumored entanglement. But here's where things get interesting. In spite of all the powerful women that Garbo linked up with, would you believe she still returned emotionally to her drama school sweetheart, the Swedish actress Mimi Pollock? It's a cute tale if you ask me. Number 4. Joan Crawford. When it comes to sordid and steamy Hollywood affairs, only a few come close to Joan Crawford and her legendary sexual prowess. Throughout her career, the award-winning actress had dozens of affairs, relationships, and scandals, each as wild as the next. But unlike other women and men on our list, Joan Crawford had a different kind of promiscuity. She used her sensuality and allure to climb the ladder and never shied away from initiating liaisons. Take, for instance, back in 1949 when director Vincent Sherman was taken off guard while making preparations for a movie called The Damned Don't Cry. Crawford invited him to a studio screening room to watch some of her previous work. However, it was only a facade. She brought Sherman there to seduce him, with little care that he was happily married with 2 young children. It didn't take long for Joan Crawford to quickly develop a notorious reputation for using her personal relationships with co-stars and directors to advance her career, secure better camera angles, and increase screen time. This behavior often stirred resentment among other women in the industry, including Bette Davis, who famously quipped that Crawford had been romantically involved with nearly every male star at MGM. During a time when sexuality was one of the few tools women could wield in a male-dominated Hollywood, Joan Crawford's bold approach often caught her partners, both men and rumored women, off guard. She was known for surprising her companions by arriving unclothed to private encounters or replacing her leading man with a fresh new face. Why? Because she was trying to take control of industry figures and films, persuading directors to favor her with more close-up shots and make her male co-stars less likely to upstage her. Worse yet, she was largely successful in doing so because only a few men could actually resist the temptation of bedding one of the most sought-after faces in the industry. Her endgame was to maintain her image as one of the brightest stars in the industry, and she stopped at nothing to accomplish it. Even her relationships were weird. Less than a year after her divorce from Fairbanks, the insecure and uneducated Joan Crawford found herself drawn to another man who could help refine her, actor Franchot Tone. His background and sophistication as the son of a wealthy businessman captivated her, but she was blinded to his darker side. Tone was an alcoholic man who had well-documented cases of violence and infidelity. Crawford was shattered long before they eventually got separated. Before we go into the final three picks on our list, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel and turning on post notifications to be in the loop for all of the amazing videos we've got lined up on our channel. You can't afford to miss what we've got next.
You know you're very impudent. You are.
Number 3. Errol Flynn. Widely recognized as the natural heir to Douglas Fairbanks, Errol Flynn was a standout figure of Hollywood's golden age. He was praised for his charismatic swashbuckler roles and frequent collaborations with leading actresses, but was equally infamous for his womanizing ways and indulgent pleasure-seeking lifestyle. There is no doubt that Flynn was a compulsive womanizer. At the height of his career, the actor personified Robin Hood and the other heroic figures that he portrayed on screen. Plus, he had an unmatched allure. Women couldn't resist his striking eyes, chiseled body, and Flynn knew all about it. He famously quipped in a 1950 interview that his gravestone should read, "If it moved, Flynn bedded it," fueling rumors about his interest in both men and women. His posthumous autobiography also detailed numerous sexual escapades with women. The worst part? Flynn took advantage of his good looks and fame to get out of all kinds of trouble, from womanizing to hard drinking, chain smoking, and, for a time in the 1940s, narcotics abuse. Remember his SA case in 1943? He called Hollywood's most successful fix-it attorney, Jerry Geisler, to make the allegations get crushed. Flynn's fans turned out in swarms, filling the courtroom and lining up in the hallway, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Geisler also sought favor in a case by planning to seat as many female jurors as possible. 9 women and 3 men were in the jury box when testimony started, and Flynn was acquitted on all counts by the end. As far as relationships go, Flynn was linked romantically with Lupe Velez, Marlene Dietrich, and Dolores Del Rio, among many others. Flynn's mansion featured hidden compartments and mirrors, including a trap door above a guest bedroom that allowed for covert observation. You think that's weird? During a house tour in the 1970s, Rolling Stones guitarist Ronnie Wood noticed the presence of 2-way mirrors and speaker systems in the ladies' room, designed not for security, but to indulge Flynn's voyeuristic kinks. While no concrete evidence had been discovered that unequivocally documents Flynn's affairs with men, there are rumors that he enjoyed bedding men just as much as he did women. It's true, Flynn's bisexuality was kept a secret because homosexual acts were illegal in the United States and Great Britain. The mere suspicion of being queer could permanently derail a career, and Flynn would have desperately hated that to happen, a sentiment the next woman on our list never cared for. 2. Tula Bankhead. Witty, rebellious, unafraid, and drop-dead gorgeous, Tula Bankhead had every ingredient needed to be a star at her fingertips. However, she was a bit of a social misfit, in many ways too grand for Hollywood. She caused a massive stir when she told an interviewer she badly needed a man to cure her 6-month abstinence. But that's not even close to what the studios had to cover up. As one of the most prominent sex symbols of her day, Tula was so often the object of male attention. Everyone adored her, dreamt of her, and was attracted to her undying allure, all of which she was well aware of. She notoriously got around, and her sexual appetite is said to be bottomless. Matter of fact, she declared conventional kinks and desires in bed gave her claustrophobia. Her relationships were notoriously numerous, involving men and women, and she reportedly counted 185 lovers before being interrupted. By her 20s, she had undergone at least 4 abortions, but a severe health scare in 1933 led to hospitalization for violent abdominal pain. Her condition was so dire that one newspaper prematurely published her obituary. Doctors later diagnosed advanced gonorrhea, which necessitated a life-altering hysterectomy. Beyond her promiscuity, Tula struggled with substance abuse and alcoholism, and reportedly smoked as many as 120 cigarettes a day. Add that to the fact that she was openly bisexual at a time when that sexual orientation wasn't widely accepted in society, and you've got one of the craziest women to ever grace Tinseltown. Before her death, Tula Bankhead boasted of having slept with more than 5,000 people, and though the figure should be taken with a pinch of salt, historical evidence suggests a long list of names with whom she was said to have been romantically linked. These include megastars such as Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford, and Marlene Dietrich, and supporting actresses like Patsy Kelly and Hattie McDaniel. Of course, linked is ambiguous. Did she have relationships with these women? Just beddings? Friendships? Well, it's hard to say, but what we do know is that The New Yorker alleges Tula slept with 500 people throughout her life. This makes her one of the most promiscuous actresses of the Golden Age, if not the most. Only the number one on our list can rival her.
Being afraid.
That Caesar would not permit it.
Number 1. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor may be remembered for her iconic acting career, starring in classics like Cleopatra and Father of the Bride. However, just as legendary as her on-screen performances was her tumultuous love life, marked by intense passion, heartbreak, and 8 high-profile marriages. I'll be blunt. Elizabeth Taylor was all about the thrill. She loved being risky and having affairs she definitely shouldn't be in. In the 1950s and early 1960s in America, during Elizabeth Taylor's prime, sex was considered taboo and illicit, which only added to its allure and fascination for the star. Hailed as one of the most notorious seductresses in Hollywood, Elizabeth Taylor didn't care who you were with, not even if you were married to her best friend. Remember her affair with Eddie Fisher? He was Debbie Reynolds' husband at the time Taylor slept with him, and Reynolds was her best friend. Can you imagine how scandalous that must have been? It all started in March 1958 when Taylor's husband, Mike Todd, died in a plane crash. This heartbreaking event initially garnered widespread sympathy for the grieving actress. However, public sentiment quickly shifted to scandal when it was revealed that Taylor was involved with Eddie Fisher, who happened to be the husband of her close friend Debbie Reynolds. In the culturally conservative climate of 1950s America, such extramarital affairs were met with significant disapproval and moral outrage. But Taylor didn't care. They tied the knot in 1959, but their marriage unraveled rapidly once Taylor began working with Richard Burton, who would become her next husband. The crazy part? Taylor allegedly admitted she never loved Fisher, describing their union as one big awful mistake. She married Burton 10 days later. Taylor eventually expressed deep regret for her actions toward her former friend Debbie Reynolds and offered a sincere apology. Thankfully, the damage wasn't irreparable, and the two managed to mend their friendship, eventually becoming close again. Elizabeth Taylor married 7 times during her life, with Richard Burton, whom she considered the love of her life, being her husband on 2 separate occasions. Her final divorce came in 1996 from construction worker Larry Fortensky. She chose to remain single after that until her passing in 2011. It's been fascinating uncovering the daring lives of Hollywood's most promiscuous figures, but for now, the curtain falls on today's journey. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's wild past. Ready for more scandalous takes? Check on the video currently playing on your screen. We'll see you there.